It's the first day of my new career. I'm a classical music host on public
So I'm
radio.
about to give my
And I
first
feel a lot of
TEDx
pressure
talk.
preparing for
I'll
my
be part of the
show. Everyone knows
2024
just
Amoskeag
how
Milliard TEDx
struggling it is
in
to keep
Manchester, New
people engaged
Hampshire.
today.
What an honor!
Often you find
And what a
yourself
cool
doing
institution to
exactly
be a part of as I
right
build
as
this
most of the
professional
data sets
speaking
are
part
starting to
of the
return to
blissful
them.
constellation.
It must be
My
frustrating
talk
to
happens in
know
exactly a week from
how
today,
everyone
October
wants to
10th,
hear
and I'll
one
be on the
more
stage of the
thing.
historic Palace Theater, a gorgeous 834-seat gem built in 1914. It's going to be just me on the red dot, with a few photos, a bit of music, and a talk about resilience. The theme this year is wild, and it's all about unfiltered ideas that drive creativity, as well as groundbreaking change. And let's be honest, my story has been all about wild change. You're listening to Blissful Hiker Podcast. I'm Allison Young, the solo, female, middle-aged, titanium-reinforced, neurological movement disorder manager, cancer thriver, and long-distance backpacker Blissful Hiker. This podcast is a series of personal essays that couple storytelling with found sound and my own flute playing to explore a journey of self-discovery. We're badass people who don't need permission to blaze our own trails in this journey we call life. Thanks so much for being one of the over 100,000 downloads. You can spread the word by leaving a 5-star rating and a short review on Apple, and share the podcast if you love it with friends and family. Thanks so much. So do you know what a TED Talk is? There have been a few people asking me, saying, I think I've heard it on the radio or I've seen a video. What exactly is a TED Talk? Well, TED is not someone's name. It stands for Technology, Entertainment, and Design. And it was co-founded by Richard Saul Wurman and Harry Marks. Back in 1984, that's when the first event happened, mostly to showcase developments in Silicon Valley. And it featured a stellar lineup discussing fractal geometry, 3D graphics, and a brand new invention in 1984, the compact disc. Interestingly enough, though, that first event was a bust, and it would take another 6 years before the idea caught on, eventually attracting presenters and audience members from a multitude of disciplines, all united by a shared sense of curiosity and intellectual query. TED went nonprofit in 2001 and continues to foster a commitment to seek out, quote, the most interesting people on Earth and let them communicate their passion. How about that? I'm one of the most interesting people on Earth. Well, 8 years later, TEDx was founded to help usher in a more localized and independently curated version of the event. That's what I'm a part of. Okay, but then after I give this whole spiel, people usually say, right, but what is a TED Talk? Sorry. A TED Talk is pretty unique. It's not an academic presentation. It's not a business presentation. It's not a sermon. It's not an essay, a legal brief, or a performance. But in a weird way, it's a little bit of all of those things. The TED tagline is ideas worth spreading. And these ideas don't have to be new, but they need to be big and profound, thought-provoking and timely, even revolutionary, ideas that have an impact on our lives and the world. So the key is not to simply identify and present the idea, but to be clear on why this speaker, that would be me, is the exact right person to share the idea. So the talks are usually very personal. They're filled with stories that touch on the speaker's experience, while at the same time are also universally relatable. And we do that by using an informal speaking style, one for me that's quite familiar. It can be likened to my work as a radio host, where I aimed for a more conversational one-on-one style, less speaking to the listener and more with them. I mean, right now, do you feel like I'm talking to you, with you, or at you? That's the real question. And one of the challenges as I prepared my speech was I have to get to the point quickly. There's this wonderful old chestnut about a minister giving a passionate and well-crafted sermon. He hits all the right notes, tells good stories and compelling anecdotes, and his delivery is flawless. And as congregants file out of the church, one stops to offer advice to the minister. She says, you can still save souls in under 20 minutes. Ooh, harsh, right? That's kind of the way TED Talks work. They have to all be under 18 minutes. And that requires a speaker to kill a lot of darlings in her editing process and hone in on what counts. And you also might be familiar with TED's red dot. That's where a TED speaker places herself on stage to speak, without notes and all from memory. This challenge is making me very nervous. It's particularly of interest to me in helping me get off the page and to interact more naturally with the audience. So memorizing is tricky, but it's part of the style. No notes, no podium, no nothing. Talk about breaking down the fourth wall. So why is giving a TEDx important to me right now? Well, the TED brand is respected worldwide. Maybe you hadn't heard of it until I told you about it, but for most of us, we've at least have something in our subconscious about TED Talks. And it's one of the most sought-after public speaking forums around. All speakers were never paid, but TED's influence and the exposure it brings means a great deal to my brand going forward. It's going to help me build my audience and likely, hopefully, fingers crossed, boost my speaking career. But all that aside, the timing for me is perfect because I'm in the midst of defining who Blissful Hiker is and what exactly she does, besides blissfully hiking. And the unique TED process is helping me because I'm not writing and practicing in a vacuum. I've been provided with a coach to shepherd me through the process. And my coach, Meryl Levin, she's fabulous. She's a TED alumna herself, and she's a creative and an entrepreneur. And like me, she's from New York. On day one, she asked how I preferred to work, and I said, by not wasting time trying to make me feel good. Just give me the criticism and advice, get right to it. And we're like a match made in heaven. So my talk is about resilience and stepping forward on the path in spite of life's inexplicable randomness. It's a good one. And by now, with a week to go, I've got it all memorized. I've got it down pat. And I'm sharing it with friends and family, as well as some of the senior communities that I've been speaking with for some time. So I'm feeling really ready. And you might be thinking, okay, she's speaking in Manchester, New Hampshire? Why? Nowadays, TEDx is so competitive, it spawned an entire cottage industry of coaches, trainers, mentors, and public relations marketing gurus. So I had the good fortune to meet two extraordinary women from New Hampshire in one of my networking groups. They both liked my story and my unique approach to life. And sort of separately, we started talking, and the next thing I knew, I was formally recommended as a speaker for this particular TEDx Amoskeag Milliard in Manchester. Still, even though I was recommended, to be chosen as a speaker requires an application. In it, I outlined my idea worth spreading, both in writing and in video, and I justified why I was the perfect choice to present this idea, and bolstered my ideas with solid research, too. But what you may not know is I have a deep connection to New Hampshire. I was 7 years old when my mom moved both my brother and me up there from New York after she left my dad. And it was such a painfully lonely and confusing time for me. So I began wandering the woods and the meadows to soothe and ground myself. In some ways, Blissful herself was born in New Hampshire. So the $64,000 question, can I come and see you speak? Yes, please. I've put a link to get tickets, and if you use the code Allison15 at checkout, you get a discount. So I'd love to meet you in person, but if you can't come, the talk will be filmed and it will be made available online after the live event. And of course, you can watch that as many times as you want and scrutinize every single gesture I make for free. So I hope that answered your questions about TED Talks. Would love to talk to you anytime about the process I went through. Drop me a line at blissfulhiker.com. Blissful Hiker Podcast is on all podcast platforms. Thanks so much for listening and coming along with me on the journey. After I finish my talk next week, I hope to do some hiking and finish the New Hampshire section of the Appalachian Trail, south of Moosilauke and heading to Hanover. The leaves should be gorgeous, though I'll have to be prepared for any kind of weather out there. I'll have more on my Appalachian Trail hike and the Pyrenees High Route coming up in future episodes. Until we meet again, my friends, kia kaha and happy trails.